Hello, this is Joe Federico, and I'm an LGBT CEO.
Hello, Out Bosses. Rhodes Perry here, and welcome to this week's episode of The Out Entrepreneur, a weekly podcast where I get to interview today's most inspiring LGBTQ bosses crushing it in business. Now, before jumping into the show, I wanted to extend a virtual invitation to our weekly office hours taking place every Friday at 2:30 p.m. Pacific. We've opened up our office hours to all LGBTQ plus business owners looking for support during COVID-19. So if you need some extra inspiration, want some additional support, please join our mailing list by texting OUTBOSS, all one word, to 33777. Okay, so without further ado, I am super excited to be interviewing Joe Federico, who is calling all the way from New Jersey. So Joe, welcome to the show.
Hey, Rhodes, how are you?
Hey, I am great. I am super excited to introduce you to the audience. And
me too, and I appreciate your time today. Thank you.
Yeah. Well, thank you. And for folks who aren't familiar with Joe's work, he is a seasoned marketing and branding professional and a best-selling author. He has blended his expertise to start up Anchors to Dusk Media and its sister company, Anchors to Dusk Publishing. His businesses have assisted Fortune 500 companies, tech influencers, reality television stars, and startup founders like you and me with their social media and branding strategy. So Joe, why don't you kick us off and just tell us a little bit more about both of your businesses and what makes them unique?
Of course. So originally, Rhodes, I'm a jack of all trades, and that's how I got my start in the business, both in publishing and marketing, and also in the world of tech and becoming more digital in the space. So I had worked originally for M. Evans Inc. Publishing in 2005. I was an assistant. I was an intern for about 2 weeks with some very serious training. Thought I wanted to originally be a publisher. And I'll get to that in a moment. I thought it was the best job in the world. I was making maybe $300 a week. And I thought that was gold back then, just meetings and having friends, come to meet me for lunch and for all these, just being alive in my my very early 20s. I thought that was really just the best job in the world. And I really enjoyed that. And that kind of led me to, with my partner of now over 14 years, fast forward a few years after that, 2009, 2010, we were invited to actually write a historical nonfiction book through Arcadia Publishing about the town of Galloway Township in South Jersey, over here on the East Coast. So we were approached by Arcadia Publishing. My future sister-in-law actually lives in one of the original houses from the 1800s, the late time period of that century. And, but she had one of our nieces back then. She works full time. She works for the Fish and Wildlife Department of the U.S. And she knew that my partner and I were into, history and also publishing. So she passed that along to us. And that was really my first or my second taste into the world of historical nonfiction. We spent about a year and a half, 2 years, really doing the research, meeting people, the ancestors of those who had lived in Galloway Township, starting from the late 18th century until we kind of cut it off about 1995-ish in the book itself. We sold out our first day on Amazon. So that wasn't even what we set out to do. The point was to meet new people, spread our story, and preserve the history of Galloway Township. Fast forward, we didn't have the, not to be negative, but the best experience with our publisher. So I launched Anchors to Dusk Publishing in 2013-14. And that kind of evolved from where the market was and the ad value was for clients into social media marketing in 2014 and 15. So that's really a nutshell of where I come from. I have a background in history in writing and publishing, which I still do under my own imprint, but I really just had to pivot. And I'm here again trying to pivot during COVID-19. So
Yeah. I love that you covered a good stretch of time, and
a lot. Yes.
Yeah. And it's hard to do that. And I thank you for it, because I just want to underscore a couple of things you shared. One, one of the first jobs that you've had, early in your career, gaining the knowledge, skills, expertise of the industry itself, the publishing industry, and what an industry that is constantly being disrupted. I think over the past 10 years, it's just to be able to get your story out in the world. There's so many other ways other than kind of getting a traditional publishing deal. And I'm excited to explore that with you on the show.
Of course.
Yeah, I know a lot of folks who tune in have a lot to say as business owners and from lived experience. And I think the piece that you shared of being a published author yourself, getting a book publishing deal, working with a larger publishing company, and like you said, not maybe the best experiences. So help us understand, like, when you say that, what wasn't so great about that experience, and what are you doing differently right now in your own publishing company?
Of course. So you know what? I firmly believe in two things, Rhodes, that everything happens for a reason and how it's supposed to, and that you have to learn from your experiences. So that's kind of where I was, a little wet around the ears, kind of a babe in the woods with my partner. At that time, we thought originally, and not to sound greedy, but I think every either author or an entrepreneur or a business owner thinks they'll jump in and make money right away. And we thought, again, not to sound greedy, but originally we thought, oh man, we're going to have it made. You know what I mean? And we once got the contract. So the first hurdle, and, again, the phrase try again really should resonate with people listening and those who are out to really go it on their own, is we submitted the proposal and it actually got rejected first. So we are from North Jersey, not from South Jersey. So that was the first hurdle, where the publishing company, really didn't want to hear our story, and they, wanted proof that we would be sticking to our schedule and have connections in South Jersey. So being the Aries that I am, very type A from childhood, I was like, well, we really want to do this project, and here's why. So I approached the Galloway Historical Society. We got connections. We got, again, the bloodlines and the ancestors of those who had been in Galloway Township for years, for decades, for centuries on board with us. The older folks, and they are, complete sweethearts. I hope that they're doing well during COVID-19. I have to, a shout out if they're listening or, sharing with this to make it timely, Rhodes. But so that was the first hurdle. Then we've, spent time doing our own proposal, doing our own research, no backing financially whatsoever. So a shout out to my in-laws, my future in-laws in Galloway, that housed us actually for an entire summer, basically, and fed us and brought us to our appointments. So it really takes a village, especially when creating a book and a project. So we got published. We were on time. We were early, a few months early with this project with Arcadia Publishing. It got released. We sold out on our first day on Amazon, which was fantastic. That had never happened to us before. And we made that connection. I was truly grateful and still am to this day for that experience. But a few weeks after, we had a few people, I'm not going to name names. I never, want to, shame or point fingers, but it wasn't well received essentially in the local community by other historians. And they had written some not so nice letters to the publishing company that, came back to us, and we were given two roads to either pull the book, and it was just brand new and it just sold out, and to restart the project, or to go ahead and just ignore it. And I wouldn't say it was an LGBTQ, plus prejudice necessarily, but there was a quote unquote attack on the project being so new. So we just we pulled up ourselves up by the bootstraps, and we proceeded accordingly. We, went forward with the contract, and we had said, we spent a lot of hard earned time on this. We weren't really working full time. We forged ahead. And that's, I think, the first lesson that I really learned, not only in publishing, but in business, is you can't let people get you down, because, you kind of make it when people start talking. And that was that first lesson, Rhodes, where I'm like, I'm really proud of this. I'm going to see it through. I signed up for a year contract. And if people thereafter want to take over once that contract is done, then have at it. So, and then in business, I learned, again, you really have to forge ahead, and you have to keep your head up and believe, have conviction in the project that you're working on going forward. So
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. So it sounds like just in that experience that wasn't so great, it's the reception, right? It's you invested so much of your time, you were able to deliver, and you ruffled some feathers of other folks in the region that are also kind of experts in their field. And
Absolutely.
and that's the risk that I think all of us as business owners take when we hang a shingle, we offer a service, we offer a product. It's slightly different, in terms of competition versus fellow historians and writers. Yet, there's still kind of a similar objective of market share, of sharing, in this instance, a knowledge product, a book, with readers who are into history of South Jersey, right? And perhaps that ruffled some feathers of other folks that also write about that.
Of course.
And kind of on this show, I mean, and kind of in the way that I personally operate business, it's like, you've got next. It's one of those things, a rising tide does lift all boats. So try not to have the comparanoia, as one of our former guests, David DiGiorgio, says a lot. And kind of focus in on what you're good at and keep delivering. And it sounds like that was a learning lesson for you of just remembering that you're going to see this project through. And
of course it was.
Yeah. And like you said, you forged ahead. So in terms of publishing, you've got this, professional experience working for a major publishing house. You had the experience of actually being a published author. You now have your own company. And in this company, what are you doing differently that looks out for the best interests of the authors that you work with?
Of course. So again, I had tried to pivot, and I currently am still doing that within the publishing aspect of my business, and trying to bring to light, especially those who may not have the chance necessarily to work with a large publisher like Penguin, or Random House, or an Arcadia Publishing, for instance, like an international, company that is so large. I try to watch out for the little guy, not only in the LGBTQ plus community, but also those that really have a voice and have a story to tell. That now includes, not to be extremely political, but also those of color and of different races. And I really try to be an ally and an advocate and tell their story. So that's, the next stage of the publishing aspect, Rhodes.
Yeah, I think that's great. So getting underrepresented voices that have historically not had the opportunity to work with those larger publishing houses. And, I know as someone who I've worked with a hybrid publisher, right? So not a Random House, not a Penguin, not on the self-publishing route. Is that how you see your publishing company? Is it more of a hybrid publisher, or are you now competing with the big ones? Do you see yourself doing business in that more traditional model, or are you trying to disrupt that traditional model specifically because it didn't work so great for you, doesn't work so great for folks from marginalized social identities? So
exactly.
What does that look like for you?
So I am evolving into a hybrid company. I have no interest whatsoever, at least right now. That could change in the future. Should anything big happen, and especially now, being a disruptor to me is very important, and I hold that dear to my soul and heart and my conviction in business. So, I really don't have any interest in competing with large publishers, and I do want to be the advocate, the voice, the wheelhouse for those that are, have a story to tell that otherwise wouldn't be able to do so with a large publisher. And that's my mission right now, at least with, just going forward, of course, with my business, with the marketing and, PR and social media, but also with the publishing company.
So a question for you, when you're thinking about someone who is not in the world that you're in. So for me, I think about kind of these three different channels of getting published. Of course, there's you're bootstrapping it alone, you're self-publishing, you put your book out on Amazon, there you go. Or probably other kind of Ingram Spark or, other competitors to Amazon. You've got like the traditional publishers, right? And a route that you took yourself. And then you've got the hybrid publishing. So if you could name a single pro and con for each of those three buckets of getting your work published, could you walk us through what those are And from your perspective, why you view hybrid publishing as kind of this better pathway, I guess, because that's
Sure.
how you're modeling your business.
Sure. So I would say, through a large publisher, you don't get the hands-on experience that I would like to be offering clients, and also that will evolve into, friends and a long-term relationship with, a platonic, of course, for clients. I would say that you don't get the hands-on experience. You don't get the attention that I feel, especially all authors deserve. So that's the con in that. The pro to going the traditional route in publishing with a large publisher like Random House, Penguin, so forth and so on, is that you become a household name more easily, in my opinion. So that's the pro and con for that. As far as self-publishing, the pro is, most often than not, you own the rights to all of your work. But the con is you have to work a lot harder to equate your name to a household name, for instance, to become a more well-known. There's a lot more that you have to do, again, on your own in a self route. As far as the hybrid, you get the attention from somebody like me, for instance, that I wouldn't, there's a negative connotation, unfortunately, around the quote unquote indie publishing name. So a boutique, hybrid publisher like myself, that part of the business, you definitely get the hands-on experience. You get the attention I think you deserve, that you most certainly deserve. And that's the pro for that. The con, I would say, possibly is if you go, and you publish, through me, for instance, but, if you would like to go on the Smashwords, for instance, they own half of the rights to your work, for instance. And that would be a, con for some, if not most people, where you have to enter some kind of contract in a hybrid kind of situation going forward. So.
Yeah. So I think that's really helpful because, the reason why I ask it is that I think sometimes people believe that with a traditional publisher going that direction where I'm going to be the household name and everyone's going to know me, I think the piece that sometimes is not brought kind of up in considering this path is that if you're not a Michelle Obama, right, or someone that's a household name, an Oprah, right, that a book advance to work with a traditional publisher may seem great, depending what the dollar value is. If it's not in the millions, for like these celebrities, the marketing piece, you're still going to be doing a lot of that marketing on your own, almost as if you're self-publishing, right? So I think that with that hybrid model that you're talking about, that's, part of the how you negotiate the rights and the royalties and all that good stuff, that's a part of that conversation. Yet I think because like what you're saying with that attention, there's some advantages to kind of not having to go it alone, having someone looking out for you, and the fact that, you have a network of other published authors within that smaller boutique, publishing house that are kind of on that pathway on the path with you and almost have your back, and that's
exactly.
Exactly. Yeah. So I'm excited by what you're doing, in terms of, I want to keep talking about this, but I want to also link you to our LGBT entrepreneur community. So I'd love to shift gears a little bit and hear more about your story of, being LGBTQ in the workplace and also how you may view that as an advantage in your business. So first, I'd love to know a little bit more, and this might be in the early days when you were working for a publisher, if there was ever a time where it was difficult for you to bring your whole self to work because of being LGBTQ, and if so, what was going on, at that moment in time? And in hindsight, what did you learn from it? How were you able to work around it in that moment? Just to give those folks who are tuning in right now, who are still negotiating how out they can be in their own work, a little more inspiration.
Sure. So, back in 2004 or 5-ish, not to date myself, but my first job in publishing at M. Evans Inc. was a very small publisher, and I actually had gotten the job. They say that it's all about who you know, and my mother had worked with this wonderful Russian woman, that had money and then had her own her own publishing company. So that was an in for me, not because I was LGBT, but because it was just through the connection. So I felt relatively safe, and I wasn't completely out only because I had just come out at that time, around like 19, 20 years old when I had worked, in the city. But outside office hours, I was more of myself, and that actually helped, being in the city that never sleeps, in the Big Apple, that really brought me to life, kind of helped me and pushed me toward being more of myself in the office. So that was a plus, for me back then. I can say years later, even to this day, I'm still, I wouldn't say pretty cautious because I'm ashamed of who I am, because I'm not. But I'm, definitely, again, pivoting, evolving my own voice, not only as a business person, a businessman, a part of the LGBTQ plus community, but, I'm trying to have more conviction in who I am and in being more transparent, and to deliver that through my social media, outlets, through my business with my clients. I worked for a Fortune 500 company doing all of their social media back in 2016 to 17. And it was a little more difficult because it was more corporate. It was a very, tight-buttoned, tight-lipped environment where I didn't really have the freedom to be myself. And I wouldn't say went back in the closet, but I wasn't as boisterous as, as I am now working for myself. And that was a little difficult for me because I was older. I was, wiser. I had more of a foundation of where I wanted my business to go and my career. And it wasn't until I actually shifted from being a full-time consultant to a full-time employee at this Fortune 500 company where I could be more of myself, because I shifted environments and I shifted in the business to more of a startup scene. And that's where I kind of, quote unquote, came out again to my coworkers. And that was well received. So going forward, I, try to, again, not only be an advocate for myself and the community, but also try to play it safe at first and kind of feel things out. And that's how I proceed accordingly, especially, again, with my own business.
Yeah, I want to kind of underscore a couple things of what you just shared in that, in this environment, and more recently too, kind of when you were working with this Fortune 500 company, the culture that was there, that even though you yourself are out, and kind of implicitly probably, you were still assessing, am I safe here? Can I trust people with sharing more about who I am? And you weren't getting that back, right, from your colleagues.
No, so I was not, exactly.
No signals of like, hey, we're so happy that you work here, and that you felt comfortable enough to put a rainbow flag on your desk or a picture of your partner.
No, it was corporate 24/7. You went home, you earned a check, and a nice check and a nice package of benefits, but it was not me. Just bottom line. So.
Yeah, and it sacrifices so much of everyone, right? Like if people could show up more authentically in their work in that environment, what more could be possible, right? Like how much more risk would you take to have those kind of business successes and industry breakthroughs? Being in those moments, I've been there, and it's hard because you're trying to figure out what's happening here, and why don't I feel comfortable being as out as I normally am with my communities and everything outside of work. So I think what you're sharing is a common feeling, that it's not so much like you said that you're in the closet. It's this, you're kind of censoring different things based on the environment and the situation that you're in with your peers, your colleagues, your supervisors, et cetera.
Exactly. It was very primal as well.
Yeah, for sure. And it's interesting you said that, like, as soon as you got, hooked into the startup scene, it's so different because so much of it is driven by why you're doing a particular business and how that's related to your own story. And there's a different way that you can connect with people. And so on that note, as you're building out your business right now, from your own lived experiences of being within the LGBT community, do you believe that those experiences allow you to stand out in your business today? And I call those experiences our rainbow superpowers. So if you do, like, what's kind of a superpower of your own that allows you just to kind of show up more authentically and kind of put people at ease because you're just yourself?
Of course. So I would say the first part of your question, to answer that, yes. And that has helped me become more organic, authentic, especially in learning my craft in the marketing and social media and tech PR world, is that stories sell, but not sell financially, but sell to attract a crowd. And that's the business now I'm, evolving more, that I have more time to put towards that as we're home under quote lockdown, and trying to be safe and telling my story not only through, the written word, but also through social media marketing. And that has brought me out of my own shell. And I have found that people come up to me, again, not to get business, but to tell my story and share my experiences, where people feel comfortable coming up to me that may eventually lead to a business deal, for instance. And that especially has been in the LGBT community and people of color, where I am just trying to be organic. I'm trying to be an advocate, for myself, but also to share my story, my past experiences, and people feel comfortable coming up to me. And that I feel blessed that I'm able to do that, just hands down. So.
Yeah, I like what you're saying about stories attracting a crowd, right? That you're not necessarily going to sell something immediately by sharing something about who you are, yet it gets people interested. And I think that goes to that old saying in business of liking, knowing, and trusting, that's not possible unless you give a little bit. And you give a little bit about something that's uniquely you and yours. And I think what you're helping other folks with in business, whether it's writing their story in a book or thinking about marketing and branding, is exactly that. In the world that you're in, with at least on the marketing and branding side, you and I could just Google right now to see how many companies around the world are doing that, right? And yet people still find you, right? They still find you because there's something about you that resonates with them, and they want to work with you. They like, know, and trust you, or they want to like, know, and trust you more. So I think
that's my goal as well, yeah. Rhodes, sorry to interrupt, I apologize, but even with speaking with new clients and, trying to grow a brand from home with a little more time than I would have in a quote normal, world, which we're also pivoting and evolving to and from, I would say that on a conversation, on a like an initial conversation, if somebody were to come up to me and say, I would like to work with you and here's why, I don't sell, first of all. Second of all, I tell them this is not only a business partnership, but I would like to get to know you and become your friend. And here's why. And I list out X, Y, and Z and how I feel that I could work with a specific person. So it all, depends on, the interaction and how well that goes. And to building trust. I mean, to go to the branding aspect just really quickly of my background and expertise and colors and branding and social media, the whole package, you think, for instance, like a Coca-Cola, or you think of a Wendy's. Those are household names that you feel comfortable purchasing. So, I try to use the big dogs, and I'm not a big dog, and I don't want to be, at least for some time, to be unique and stand out. But I want to take their tactics of being approachable, feeling comfortable speaking with me as their strategist, as their consultant, and to build that brand and that foundation that way as well going forward.
Yeah. And I people need that. I think people need that kind of, as you say, that kind of strategist or coach or friend, like whatever the title is. It's almost like permission, right? If you're putting yourself out there, it feels risky enough as a business owner, so having someone like yourself really guide through the why and kind of connecting to, like you said, like what some of the tactics are with larger corporations, like how that can help a smaller business. I think that's why people go to you. I think we need your services in that way of understanding.
Oh, thank you so much. Truly, I mean that 100%. Thank you.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's really understanding that. It's kind of like in the work that I do, so much of it is centered around culture. And yet there's business leaders that don't understand that they have a culture in their organization when they look at me, when I ask them to describe their culture, and they can't. So it's almost like for you, I'm sure when you go in, talking to business leaders about their brand, what's your brand strategy, or what's your guidelines around what you can communicate about your brand and what you can't. I think for a lot of startups or smaller businesses, there's just so much to do that it's kind of the last thing on your mind, and yet it's the first thing that people see, at least virtually, to get
exactly
a sense of who you are, right? So,
and I learned a lot of that also through my time at a Fortune 500 company, where I was forced to look through the looking glass, if you will, or, down the rabbit hole really quickly. It was like a sink or swim type of, business and a situation.
mm-hmm.
And I carry that with me. So even though I personally probably would never go back to, corporate America or a large corporation while growing my business, I feel that I took a lot of lessons and I made them my own
mm-hmm.
from that.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, and that's the value, and that's why I really appreciated when you opened up to that first question I asked you to share about your initial experience as an employee working for a larger publisher, because you gained so much industry knowledge, insider knowledge, that had you just started out as a publishing company to compete against, your former employer, you'd be at a pretty significant disadvantage just for lack of expertise. Not to say that you couldn't get it, because you would really fast, but it allows you to start a little bit further ahead, in your business and what you want to accomplish and what you want to do different compared to where you worked or similar companies like where you worked. So I think that that's also just a valuable lesson. So for folks who are tuning in, and you're in your business and you're looking for new skills or expertise, you don't necessarily need to get another job because you're running your business, but, don't discredit looking at, volunteering for board service or, kind of collaborating with other organizations that have some of the skills or expertise you're looking to get more of. And that kind of is a nice segue for you, Joe. I'm curious, like in your business as you build it, it's clear that you care about LGBTQ communities and other disadvantaged communities. I'm curious for you, like, what are ways that you're giving back? So you had mentioned that you're working with authors who are from underrepresented groups. So are there ways right now that you have a plan to give back as your business grows? Or is there something you're doing right now just to kind of figure out, as a business owner, as a business leader, you have a lot of influence. So how are you leveraging that to make the world a little bit of a better place?
Sure. So especially those affected by COVID-19, because we really can't escape that. And the word, and phrase of trying to pivot, because it's not going away anytime soon. And I really try to use that to my advantage in marketing myself and trying to attract a client or customer. So, especially for the LGBT community that has been affected, either if they were a bartender or a club promoter, or even a small business owner, for instance, selling products and goods for our community, especially, I'm offering free training courses on how they'll be able to pivot from home, how they can start a podcast, how they can, leverage, platforms on social media to explain their craft, explain their products. So that's really what I started off doing to pivot, and helping the small business owner, for instance, but especially those affected by COVID-19 in the LGBT community. I'm really trying to give back with my time. That may lead to a business deal down the road. And if not, then that's okay too. That's what I'm trying to leverage and assist with right now, at least.
Yeah, it makes me think, I keep repeating this quote from Simon Sinek again and again. And I think it's just so relevant right now, which is give people what they want and they'll like you for a little bit. Give people what they need and they'll value you forever. And
100%. And I'm not, of course, we're all in this to come out of this pandemic, this shift in culture, the shift in our world and our society, stronger than ever. And I really have, a conviction in that too. But if I can give one thing back, at least to one person a week or a month, where I didn't charge, I will never charge, for a consultation, but especially in teaching people, again, how to quote unquote fish, then I would like to change the world one person, one client at a time.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think what you're offering, even as you said, helping business owners explain their craft or the products and services that they're offering, even a step back, I mean, I think people, as a publisher, you're in the world of storytelling. And, I find this time and again with LGBTQ folks. I find it with working with women, with people of color, as someone who's trans, with other trans folks, like really being able to share your story in a way that's accessible and positions you as kind of the expert or authority that you are in whatever kind of field you're in. There's such a need for that. And I know that people do that out in the world. I think at this moment, so many people are reinventing themselves. They're pivoting their businesses, as we've been talking about today. We're kind of reflecting on who they were in the past and who they want to be moving into this next normal. I'm wondering, is that like something that you're thinking about a lot in your business, or is that also kind of a service that you offer, as you work with authors and how to position them as thought leaders?
It is. And a big part of that, not only as a storyteller and having the experience and background for years in the world of publishing, for over 10 years in that, and about 10 to 12 years in marketing, and PR and tech. Yes, I let that drive me. I would like to come out of this stronger than ever personally, but also as a business owner, as I'm trying to pivot. Actually, almost every week, I set goals for myself on my lists, to what can I learn differently? What masterclass can I take to help my clients? What marketing course can I learn? What book can I purchase on Amazon that, will cost me nothing and it will be more valuable than gold to pivot and to learn different skills. So I'm really trying to do that with my clients, with those that are, listening, that may want to reach out to me. You're more than welcome. But the bottom line, short answer is yes. And I try to do that both in publishing and also with, marketing and PR and social media as well.
So I'm wondering, we talked a little bit about COVID-19, and I'm wondering for you, running your business really focused on coming out of this stronger than when we entered earlier this year. What's a lesson right now that you're learning that is unexpected, helpful, and is changing the way that you think about business right now?
Sure. So I would say, I guess, what's really resonating in my head right now is nothing's permanent, and you have to disrupt your own business once in a while, especially during a pandemic. Let's just call it what it is. So I'm trying to do that, and the lesson I'm learning is to be more authentic, as we talked about. But I'm learning that again every week, every day that I am under self-quarantine, is that's the way of the future. It's about a collaboration. It's about disrupting your own business and your own, self as a business owner, and to be able to further help the client stronger down the road is what I'm learning during this, especially people who may be afraid. For instance, again, I can't name names legally because I am in contract with these people, but, clients that may not have felt comfortable in their own skin or even self-promoting, their work or their business or their coaching, agency. I'm there to hold your hand, and I'm there to help you pivot because I'm a few weeks ahead of you, and I'm learning as I'm muddling through this mess as well. So,
yeah. So on that note, there's a number of folks who listen to this podcast who have not yet started their businesses. And I'm wondering, what advice do you have for those folks thinking about taking the entrepreneurial leap, haven't done so yet? What and in the midst of this pandemic, what would you say to those folks, right now? What kind of advice would you give to them?
I would say, even as a seasoned business owner, it's scary. Trying to pivot is scary, but there's no time like the present, because we are gifted this time. And I would like to, add a sidebar to that. A side note is that I know that everybody is trying to handle this and manage this differently, and I respect that. But I'm personally a type A. I'm a go-getter, and I am a city of myself that doesn't sleep. And I would like to keep on going to assure that I meet that next end goal once, we're out of this, to hit the ground running. So I would say that there's no time like the present. Use this time that you're given and gifted to work on studying up on the marketing tactics, especially social media, where they are free and it only costs you, your time to work on your persona, work on your brand, and start yesterday, Rhodes, because you will come out of this stronger. You will eventually attract the clients, and work on your story, but as organically as possible.
I love that. I think that's really helpful. And I think the pieces on social media, the platforms that are free, why not test and change, right? That's the greatest way. If you have a little bit of a following, build that organically and see how your audience responds to what you're putting out there. I think that's really good advice.
If one doesn't work, then try. There are a plethora of options out there for you. So
yeah. There's a book that I'm reading right now, and I've mentioned it on another podcast episode called The Money Tree, and it's written by Chris Guillebeau, who has written a number of books for entrepreneurs and startup founders. And I think that book also offers some really good advice for folks that are thinking about getting started, haven't done so yet, how to do it, very practically without leaving your job if you're not ready to do that, and kind of reinvent yourself. And I think that this time is a time for that. As there's so much change. We know that the old normal, there are a lot of things that I don't think many of us want to return to, and we're moving into a next normal. So why not shape that? And why not shape it to be a new reality that works better for you? So I think that this interview has been awesome, Joe. I really appreciate your time. And
thank you so much. Same here.
Yeah,
Truly.
and I'm sure folks are interested in the publishing work that you're doing, as well as the marketing and branding. So where is the single best place to find you online to learn more about what you're doing in the world?
I would say my most active platform is on Instagram. I have two, but I'm only going to share one. My business and professional page is at Joseph A. Federico. That is all of my marketing tactics and ideas and thoughts to share with the audience that may be intrigued in speaking with me down the line, in booking a free or 2 free sessions of coaching, with me as well. So that's really important, where I share stories. I share the brands that I'm currently, working with and partnered with, which is also part of my pivot. And I would say also, if you would like to contact me to learn, more about publishing more in depth, it's more of like a LinkedIn meets, social media, is my website, josephafederico.com.
Awesome. Okay, so we will include all of that good information in our show notes. So for Outbosses who are tuning in, you can find those show notes by texting Outboss, super easy, all one word, to 33777. And we will hook you up with the show notes from today, as well as where to find Joe online, and also our weekly office hours every Friday at 2:30 p.m. Pacific time. So Joe, this was great. I really appreciate your time. I think that what you offered today is really timely and also timeless. So thank you.
Oh, thank you so much.
Yeah.
For having me and for speaking with me about this, Rhodes. Thank you.
Absolutely. And for Outbosses, thank you so much for tuning in again to this week's episode. We are here every Tuesday morning. So if you're looking for inspiration to get through these tough times, this is the place. So I will see you next week, same time, same place. And for now, keep being your authentic selves 100% of the time.